say something. We were introduced, and you came up to me and you handed me a question to ask you about distance.
That's right.
God, I really want to deal with this. I think, was it Dick Ruggie or Frank
Yeah,
Thomas? One of
Dick,
the
Dick
people
Ruggie,
there
yeah,
speaking,
Dick
and you
Ruggie.
really wanted to go after that. And when you got up there, you got so into it. I didn't even have to ask. You were just there. But,
Right. I remember.
So I know some things that you're very passionate about, but I guess if we can talk about that if you want to, but you know that's a big issue, distance and how it obsoletes the stuff you do, restorations. But maybe a different question would be things like the difficulties of restorations, because I was out there at Ronimick with you many times, and you know, we were talking about things like do you add tees, do you move bunkers downfield, and if you have to, then how do you get them into the right spot? So maybe you might want to tell this crowd stuff like that, because
Sure.
I don't think, you know, we got a lot of purists here, and they don't realize sometimes the realities of the things you have to do in your projects.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's good, Tom. It is a struggle, you know. Honestly, when I first got into business, I don't know if anybody was doing restoration work. The first course I restored was in 1983. It was a golf course at Langford and Moreau at Texarkana Country Club, where Byron Nelson had his first job, and they really hired me to renovate it, which to me is renew a golf course, to renovate it. And then they gave me these old drawings by Langford and Moreau, and I went there and said, look, why don't we just, these are great drawings, and a lot of the character is still here, although the course had been rebuilt in the 1950s. I said, why don't we just restore it? So that, in a way,
Really?
was my first introduction to it. And you know, it was the first time I really realized that there are a lot of great old golf courses around the United States that, you know, were being neglected or abused. So that was when I pretty much dedicated my career to restoration.
Ron, I got to stop you right there, because 1983, nobody, this is true to say, isn't it? Nobody used the word restoration. Nobody did.
Yeah, it's to my knowledge. I don't want to make claim, you know.
Improvement or...
It was all renovation or remodel,
That's really significant.
you know. And but it, you know, it dawned on me when I looked at the drawings. And I'm not sure I did a great job. I've been back since and would like to do a lot more work. But you know, I did the best I could at that point in my career. But you know, all the time I worked with other architects, which was 17 years, I kind of had a deaf ear to a lot of what they were saying, because I grew up in northern New Jersey, played a lot of old golf courses, and was a fairly decent golfer. And so I saw a lot of Ross's work in particular, but I saw some of Flynn's work, and you know, there was some magic about it that I didn't understand, but there was something about the golf courses that I really had a deep appreciation for. And so, you know, eventually came full cycle where I had to make a decision on what to do with my career. Now, what happens at this time in your career is that you're torn between doing something that's very pure restoration and doing something that has some relationship to the skill level today and the equipment that players are using. You know, which really makes our job difficult, because the big issue today when it comes to is not just a matter of balls and implements, it's balls and implements and golf courses. So many great old golf courses are really, you know, being shelved in some respects because there's just not enough length. So the problem you have is if you decide you want to restore golf courses, is where do you draw the line between real pure restoration, and there's a lot of people in the business, even some people who are doing this kind of work, who you know, really don't understand the intent of the original architect. It was very different from today's architect. But anyway, the distinction you have to decide on is whether or not you're going to restore all the old hazards, some of which were only 150 yards off the tee, and had real value. I mean, Shinnecock is proof of that. If you look at Shinnecock and play it, and there's a lot of bunkers that don't impact you as a good player, you know, but they establish the proper fabric on the golf course, you know, the proper look, and there's a sense of achievement for the fellow who only hits it 190 yards. You know, I can talk to you all night about Ross's perception of golf and so forth, but we should do that at another time. But the difficulty you deal with today, Gil probably knows, is that everybody I deal with in the world of golf has pretty much been educated since the Arnold Palmer era. And that pretty much includes all of us in this room, whether you're my age or Scott's age or your age, quite a bit younger. Most of us have been educated in a time when people understand only the American school of contemporary architecture. And very few people, other than really, I mean, this organization, GolfClubAtlas, has been terrific. I mean, I'm having a lot of fun tonight meeting all of you, because you've had a big impact on golf and continue to every day. I mean, Joe is doing some great research. What fascinates me is the impact of the guys right here in Philadelphia. I mean, in some respects, really, the heart and soul of GolfClubAtlas is pretty much in this room. There's a few more.
I'll tell you, Ron's not just saying that. He's been saying this to me for 10 years. That, GolfClubAtlas, I mean, I know we're the bunch of maniacs and we're the site that people love to hate, but you've been saying that for 10 years.
Sure. It makes us better as an art. It makes us makes our work better, and we learn too. Very little, but we do learn. But so anyway, what I was trying to say is that what I have to deal with on all these green committees are people who really only understand what's fair, and they talk about all these things that you guys say on the website that make me mad, like risk reward and shot values and all this meaningless crap. A lot of that stuff really is. I mean, we can really, you can overcomplicate golf architecture, or you can simplify it. It's not so difficult. Someone asked a question about whether you use the land, or ask Gil a question about whether you would use the land or use your experience in a sense to recreate the golf course. I mean, you sort of do both. And I was talking earlier to Tom about the importance of people in any creative form of life studying classics. And I mentioned Wynton Marsalis, who's obviously a great jazz trumpet player. But I first heard him play in about 1973 when he came to Houston and played the Haydn Trumpet Concerto with the Houston Symphony Orchestra. And I almost get choked up, as you might sense, even today, thinking about how beautiful that was. But the point was, here's a trumpet player schooled because his father insisted upon it in the classics. And today we have very few architects that are schooled in the classics because they don't take the time to go and study. And we have very few clients and very few people who understand